Hi, if this is your first time here, welcome to my YouTube channel. Or if you're like me and you've been here before, welcome back. I'm Chaotic Curl, and in today's video, we're actually going to be making the piece that matches my cat ear hat. But before we get into that, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and of course, don't forget to join me over on Instagram and on TikTok at chaoticcurl_crafts, where you'll be able to see reels and TikToks that I've been making throughout the month. I am actually participating in a reel challenge, so I'm trying to post a reel every day this month, so don't forget to check that out over on my Instagram. And of course, I'll try to do my best and post TikToks and shorts as well here on YouTube, so don't forget to check those out as well. But let's get into this week's project. So for this week's project, like I said, I am going to be making the matching piece to my cat ear beanie. So I am going to be using the exact same yarn. It's going to be the Premier Basix Multi in the colorway Lullaby. And of course, if you remember, that yarn asks for a 5.5mm hook. So we are going to be using that. And the pattern is actually going to be linked in my description box down below. But I did get my inspiration once again from Pinterest, and this time I'm going to be following a pattern from Hey Hey Crochet. So don't forget to check out that link down below. I also did make sure to list all of the materials that you're going to need for this project, so make sure that you have everything ready to go so that we can get started. But for the project that I'm making this week, we're actually going to be making a granny square vest. So it's going to be perfect to wear in the winter for layering, and it's going to be the perfect match to my cat ear beanie. So let's get started on this project. To get started with the granny square, I like to use a magic circle, so I'm just going to wrap the yarn around my 3 fingers. This is on my left hand, so I'm going to put the hook underneath the straight yarn to grab the yarn that's my working yarn, and I'm going to make my first loop. Then of course I'm going to yarn over and pull through to have my first chain. Now from here I'm actually going to work my turning stitch, so I'm going to make that stacked single crochet turning stitch. I'm going to start off by making my first single crochet, then I'm going to go into the back leg of that single crochet, go through that loop, yarn over, pull up the loop, and make a second single crochet right on top of it. From here, that's going to count as my first double crochet. I'm going to make 2 more double crochets and then a chain 1. And I'm actually going to continue the pattern this way. So I'm going to make sure after I finish this chain 1 to do another cluster of 3 double crochet and a chain 1. And you want to finish by making 4 clusters of 3 double crochets with chain 1s in the middle and a chain 1 to finish that last cluster of 3 double crochet. Now that I've finished that last cluster with its chain stitch, I'm just going to pull the waste yarn here. I'm going to make sure it's not tangled so that I can pull it straight through the magic ring without any issues. And from there, I'm actually going to pass the loop through the first stitch, which in this case would be that top single crochet from my stacked turning chain. And I'm just going to pass the loop over, so I'm not going to do a slip stitch. I'm actually going to insert my hook into the top of that stitch, that first stitch, go through that loop again, and then just pull it through. And from here, I'm going to make my stacked single crochet turning stitch. And just like in the beginning, that stacked single crochet turning stitch counts as my first double crochet, and then I make 2 more double crochet in that chain space from the previous row. I'm going to chain 1 to make the corner, and then I'm going to make 3 more double crochet in the same chain space. And this is going to be how we're working row 2. So we're going to skip over the 3 double crochets from the previous row, and we're going to go right into that chain space again and repeat the same pattern as we are doing now. We're going to do 3 double crochet for that first cluster, a chain, and then 3 more double crochet for that second cluster. And we're going to continue that way until we have all 4 corners. So in order to avoid making a slip stitch to end this round, what we're going to do after creating that double crochet is actually take the loop off of our hook, turn our project over, and we're going to pass this loop through that top stitch for the first double crochet or the stacked single crochet turning chain that we did here. We're going to pass our loop through, and then we're just going to start working on row 3. And row 3 is actually going to have that first cluster worked right in the space between the 2 clusters from row 2. So we're going to start with my stacked single crochet turning stitch, and then we're going to work 2 more double crochets right into that same space. So after finishing that last double crochet of the 3 for that 1 cluster in the middle of the 2 clusters from the previous row, we're going to work our way into the corner stitch, and we're going to make another corner there. So we're going to do 2 clusters with a chain stitch in between, and each cluster is going to have 3 double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do another cluster of 3 double crochet, and that's actually how you're going to continue building the corners for this project. So in order to make it back to the corner, once you finish the clusters in the corner or that last double crochet for that second cluster, you're going to go into the space between 2 clusters from the previous row, and you're going to make another cluster of 3 double crochet, and you're just going to continue that way, building up your rows until you make it back to the beginning of the row. So this is what the project is looking like after 3 rounds, and I actually like to keep track of my rounds by counting in the corners, since it's easier to keep track of the 2 clusters with the chain space in the middle. So I'm just going to get started on row 4 by making my stack single crochet turning stitch and 2 double crochet to make that a cluster of 3 double crochet, since the turning stitch does count as my first double crochet. And I'm just showing you here the space between the 2 clusters from row 3 that I'm going to be working those 2 double crochet into before I head over to the corner. Okay, and now that I've finished that cluster of 3 double crochet, I'm moving into the corner, as you can see here, and we're going to work that corner by doing 2 clusters with a chain 1 space in the middle. So I've finished my 3rd double crochet for that first cluster, then I'm going to do a chain 1 and then work another 3 double crochet in that same chain 1 space from the previous row as my second cluster, and this completes the corner. Then, like how I said, we're going to continue with the round by working into the space between the 2 clusters from the previous row, and we're going to work another cluster of 3 double crochets into that same space, and we're going to continue this way for the rest of the round until we make it back to the beginning. And for this project, I'm actually working out to 16 rows or 16 rounds of the granny square. And another way that you can keep track of the rounds that you're making is actually by counting the clusters. So you're going to count 1 cluster from each corner and the clusters in between, and it should be the same number as the round that you're on. Okay, so I've finished my 16 rounds of the granny square, and I actually did a granny stripe on the side for the tab. So I'm just going to work that on the other side as well so that it matches. But this is what the project is looking like so far. So in order for me to make that side extension, I'd like to make sure that I have the front of the granny square facing me before I go into the back loop of the chain stitch in that corner. So once I have my hook into that back loop of the chain stitch, I'm just going to make my slip knot over the loop so that way I can get started on attaching the yarn. And I actually like to do it in the back loop because I feel like it makes it more invisible once the yarn is attached, since I go through the back loop with my first loop on the hook, and then I just work my stack single crochet in through the space. So not through the stitch, not through the chain stitch, but through the space in between the corner. So that way everything looks seamless. And so this first row of that side piece is actually going to be very similar to the rounds we've been working in, since I'm going to do a cluster of 3 into that corner space and then just go straight into the space between the 2 clusters from the previous row and do another cluster of 3, and I'm going to continue that way for 9 clusters. So I'm going to finish off with 9 clusters and then I'll show you guys how to work the next row. So this is what the 9 clusters are looking like, and now I'm just turning my project, and from here we're going to be working it like a granny stripe. So this is going to be a 2-row repeat. This is the second row, and what you're going to do for this one is work 1 double crochet, or in this case the stack single crochet turning chain, and then go into the next space between the 2 clusters and work 3 clusters, so 3 double crochets, and then continue that way until you make it to the end of the project, where you should be ending with 1 double crochet at the end of the last cluster from the previous row. So here is the single double crochet at the end of this row, which, as I said, is going to be at the last cluster from the previous row. And then we're just going to turn our project around. This is what it's looking like. We're going to turn our project around and we're going to make our turning stitch into that last double crochet from the previous row, and then in the space between the single double crochet and the first cluster we're actually going to put 2 double crochets, and that's going to be the first cluster of 3 for this row. And then, like we did in the first one, we're going to continue making clusters of 3 double crochets into each space between the 2 clusters from the previous row, and that's how we're going to finish off this row. And now we're actually going to make 4 rows of this granny stitch. So once we finish this row, the next row is going to be the one where we have 1 double crochet, and then we continue with the clusters of 3 between the 2 clusters from the previous row. And this is actually what it should look like. So as you can see, I have a cluster of 3 double crochet on this end, then 1 double crochet, 3 double crochet, and then 1 double crochet in that 4th row. So you're just going to continue that pattern. And here is the completed granny square with the 2 side tabs added on. So I'm just going to go ahead and add on the straps. In this case, I would be adding the straps the same way I added on the tabs. So I'm going to go into the corner stitch on each side, and I'm going to add the yarn through the back loop and then continue with the granny stripe repeat until I get the straps up to the length that I need them to be, which of course that's where I'll be able to attach the back panel as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you guys what the project looks like once it's completed. Okay, so here is the completed vest. I was able to add on the straps using the granny stripe pattern, so it still continues with the same look in the body of the vest, but this is what it looks like. And instead of sewing together the sides, I actually just added this string with some scrap yarn that I had. So thankfully it's in the same blue as the blue in the colorway, so it matches perfectly. But this is what it's looking like. Let me give you guys a 360 view. That's the back, that's the side, the front again, and the other side. And I absolutely love this. Now, I did take 2 days to complete this project just with everything that's been going on around me. But if I would have actually sat down to try and complete everything in the same day, I'm pretty sure I would have been able to get this done in about 4 to 5 hours. So it is a super simple project to make, super easy instructions to follow. And if you do decide to forego seaming the sides, it actually does get finished just a tiny little bit faster. So I definitely had a great time making this, and I love that I have something that perfectly accompanies my cat ear beanie. I will try and post something where I'm styling it just a little bit better so that it's not over my sweater, but you're gonna have to check me out over on my Instagram in order to see that, or on TikTok to see that. So don't forget, once again, to check it out over there at chaoticgirl_crafts, where you'll be able to definitely see this project, this little set here. And I do actually have some yarn left over, so I am thinking of making a skinny scarf. So you're gonna be seeing this colorway just one more time, but that project will hopefully be for next week. So we'll get that out of the way and then we'll be able to move on to a different color. But I thank you guys so much for joining me in this week's video. I hope you guys had fun making whatever project you were making. Again, don't forget to check out the description box down below if you do want the pattern for this vest. Hey Crochet did an amazing job, and I'm so happy I was able to follow this pattern to make my own vest. This is my first time making the vest, so I'm so happy it was a granny square because I love granny squares. So it worked out perfectly for me, but I hope it works out perfectly for you as well. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.